So most human beings, most people, this is the story we've been told, and this is the story we tend to tell each other, that life begins at birth, and then there's life in between, beginning at birth, and then there's this duration, and then it ends with death. Well, that's really not how it is. There is no death separate from life, and there is no birth separate from life. This, for want of a better word, this life is always born, always being born, and always dying. And the birth and the death are simultaneous. Again, for want of a better word, it's a time-bound word, simultaneous, but there isn't birth and then a space until death. There isn't a in between birth and death. What we call birth and death are just seeming happenings in this life. And this is always being born. This always appears and disappears. And the appearing and the disappearing, there's no space between them. There's no in between. And it's the in between where I live, where self lives. I live in the story of in between my birth and my death. There really is no in between. You can't find the space between happenings. There aren't actually any happenings. There's just happening. There's no sequence of events. And there's nothing continuing from one event to the next. The whole sense of me, this whole sense of my life, me and my life, is that illusion of continuation. I continue, I was here yesterday, I'm here now, and I'll be here later. And of course, there is still the story of that. The story doesn't go anywhere. We can still tell the story of what happened earlier today. But there is a massive difference between my real life and the story of my life. It's such a subtle difference that you could say life appears exactly the same. But the sense of it without the absolute reality of this being my life and the absolute reality of me living this life that I've called mine, life is incredibly light, even when it's heavy. It's me who brings all the seriousness, all the heaviness, For me, life is a matter of life and death, because it's my life and my death to come. So my story remains, but without the weight and the reality that it has when it is really, really, really real. Because that's how it is always for me. And the illusion is that I know myself. I know I'm real. And so, of course, then my story is real. And everything associated with my story, that's real too. All the others, all the events, only the significant ones, of course. It's amazing how how easily self-discriminates between those that are relevant to me, they're real, and the rest is utterly dismissed. I mean, how much of yesterday do you remember? Well, you remember all the events or the seeming events that were significant to you, that had a bearing on you. So they were either negative or positive in relation to my life. The rest isn't remembered, is it? Memory is incredibly selective. And from those memories is woven a fiction, you could say, a fictional story. Well, of course, you can confirm your story by talking to others, but you know how unreliable that is when you try and confirm your story of what happened yesterday with the others who you were with at the time, and you say, "Well, this is how it happened," and they go, "Oh no, that's not what happened." Memory is incredibly unreliable, and that's all we have to create this real story, this real life. And that's why it can feel terrifying for self. If it gets a glimpse of its own, that it's created its own illusion of reality, then there can be a lot of fear. As I stand on, which is my story of my life and my reality, seems to be falling away. And life can feel groundless in the seeming falling away. But actually, no, there is nothing to be lost. This can't be lost. And this is all there is. Even the stories aren't lost. They're just seen for what they are, which is just beautiful stories. And in our sharing with each other, which we call relationships, that's really all we have. And this is just another story too. We're storytellers. And even though it's no difference at all, there is an immense difference between my real life story and just the story. Just another story. All our beautiful stories. Because in this story, this non-duality story, you could be waiting until you know something other than the story. You know, what you could then call, oh, I've now realized reality. That's not what I'm speaking of here. That can't be known. There's no knowing what this is. You're just left with the stories. There isn't something here that can be found and that can be had and that can be held. It's forever slipping through your, as you reach for it, it is slipping through your hands in the very reaching for it. But then there can be a relaxation that it doesn't need to be known to be exactly as it is. There's no knowing required. There's no understanding required. There are absolutely no requirements. And that unconditional nature of how life actually is can feel like love, not a love that would ever be okay for me because there's nothing in it for me. But it can be felt as love, everything just being exactly as it is, for nobody, for no reason, for no purpose, for no gain. No winners, no special ones. How wonderful that no one's ever got this. Isn't that the most wonderful news? It's the end of all your heroes, though. There is a seemingly massive loss if you've always looked to be saved, you know? Most souls are looking for a savior. And this is the impossibility of that. So there's no one trapped. There's no one imprisoned. So there's no one to be released. There's no one to find freedom. There's no pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. There's just the rainbow. Oh, that's a bit poetic for me. But yeah, the rainbow's probably missed in the looking for what's at the end of it. What does the rainbow mean? There must be some significance in it. No, none at all. That's the beauty. All the looking for significance, for relevance, is missing. I'd say it's missing the point, but there isn't a point. That's the point. There's nothing to be missed. Okay. I'm just going to say something practical now. There won't be a meeting on Thursday. I'll say that again at the end, just as to remind people. But there won't be a meeting Thursday. I can't make Thursday. So I'm thinking I'll do it on Wednesday instead, even though it's only 2 days away in that illusory future. So I'm thinking I'll do it on Wednesday. It might, I'll understand if, you know, because if you're regular, then you've got used to Thursdays. It'll only be for this week. There's something quite wonderful about talking about there's no time, which I've been really speaking of, and then organizing my time for the next 2 or 3 days. How beautifully paradoxical it all is. Okay, yeah, so feel free to ask anything or share anything about what I've said or anything else.
Mats has his hand up.
Hi, Mats.
Yeah, hello.
Hello.
So, oh, now I lost my question.
Easily done.
Yeah, it's easily done. Let's see. If someone else will cut in, that's okay. Yeah, strange. Well, I'm like that sometimes. Let's wait.
Yeah, just yeah, when you're ready, Mats, when it comes back.
Okay, I got it now. Yeah, well, whoever who never lost the memory, you can throw the first rock.
Yeah.
So,
oh, yeah.
And now we now there is a risk I'm losing it again.
Yeah, well, you've got to spit it out, Matt, before it's gone again.
Yeah. Okay, so now I got it. So, okay. This loss of the separation is there anything? What about this awakening experiences that I will guess most of the people here have more or less of those? And when you feel that there is oneness and there is a flow and it feels good and all of that, is there any similarity between that and the actual loss of separation and is there any value in it, so to speak?
Good question. No, it's no to both of them, Matt.
Okay. I was.
Yeah, there's no one of the most obvious things is there's no essential value in anything. We as human beings, we are the arbiters of value. We give everything the value that it seems to have. Everything is of equal empty of value. We give things value. Well, we create the things in the first place to give them value. But yeah, to answer your first question about the awakening, no, I think one of the One of the most frustrating aspects of being a seeker is that it usually stems from some awakening experience, some special experience. And by making a particular experience special, of course, all that does is feed the possibility that something like that special experience can happen again. I mean, awakening experiences can look like anything, but as you've described, often they're the sense of the veil being lifted, that there's a sense of oneness. And then, and then that's fleeting, of course. And then I say, me is simply the absence of self. And then me comes back and says, or the sense of self comes back and says, what happened there? That was amazing. I wonder what I can do to get that back. How can I be back in that place where I seem to be? Well, it was simply the absence of the one who would be in a place. And so, of course, it's impossible. There is no possibility of going back to a place. And so in a way, awakening experiences are probably the worst thing that can happen. I mean, they are beautiful, but then so is, you know, I play golf still. Hitting a golf shot is beautiful. Well, then you hit the most wonderful golf shot, which I know is a pretty mundane material example compared with an awakening experience. But they have similarities, because I say, well, I need to do exactly the same thing, stand in the same way, swing, have the same thoughts, have the same, and retrieve what has happened, get back to that again. Because just like an awakening experience, it seems that was perfect, and now everything's imperfect again. It's not. Everything's always just as it is.
So the way life appears to you, if I may use the word you, to you now, is this awakening experience, is it just like any other experience? And or I'm confused concerning this.
Yeah, and I understand the confusion. I remember the confusion well. That how it must be that if the sense of being a separate self is no longer present, you could say, then it must be like being constantly in an awakened state, or like one continuous awakening experience. Is that what you mean?
It would have been nice. It would have been nice, yes.
Yeah, exactly. That would have been nice. And no, that is not what I'm talking about at all. Because the whole sense of the awakening experience was the sense of self describing the experience and how it was for that moment, and then it was lost. Well, there are no moments to be lost. You know, this doesn't come and go. Seeming experiences come and go. And so, what I'm trying to speak about is not an experience. But all experiences are what I'm speaking about. So put in a very straightforward way, no, this is not like an awakening experience. No. It's just how it is. Because you could say this character, this human being, doesn't, because it sounds as though you would behave in a certain way, you would be experiencing life in a certain way, but it's quite the opposite of that. It's just that life is being exactly how it is, and that includes everything. not a certain way. And the thing about an awakening experience is it's very specific, isn't it? It's a very specific experience.
Yeah, but there is a presence of peace. It's not just the loss of suffering, but it's a presence of something very, very nice.
It is, yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. There is an all-pervading peace, but the peace isn't in I wouldn't call it experiential at all. I don't know, even I haven't got the words to describe something that's not experiential. I don't know what to say about that. This is when we're trying to speak in this way, or when I'm trying to speak in this way, there really aren't words to say how can there be peace if it's not experienced. It's just because it is. But I haven't got a word for it.
may I have another question, or is there others waiting?
Yeah, go on.
Yeah.
Before you forget, Matt.
Yeah. So in the Indian tradition, they speak a lot about the deep sleep, the dreamless sleep.
Yeah.
And in one way or another, that is they find that relevant in connection to this thing that you have no words for, or that nobody has words for.
Yeah.
So now I'm trying to push words in your mouth.
Yeah, that's fine, Matt. That's okay. Yeah. So, what do you know of dreamless sleep? Yeah. Yeah, that's good.
So do you say it's similar to that, or
Well, the thing
somehow?
is, well, there isn't. You can't say it's similar to that, because what is that? So, yeah. So you would just say what is dreamless sleep is completely not knowing. You just empty, complete emptiness, without the fullness.
Without the fullness?
Yeah. Well, there's no fullness in deep sleep, is there?
Well, I'm not having a clear view of it, but you're saying what you're speaking from now is both, if I can use this expression, you speaking from somewhere, but is that both emptiness and fullness, you mean?
Well, if you ask me about deep sleep, what do I know of deep sleep? I know nothing of it at all. Nothing. And yet, of course, I long for it. And I long for the absence. I long for the emptiness. I long for the peace that comes with no fullness. There's nothing in it. It's completely empty. And that's how this is. So life is absolutely empty, as well as being absolutely full. But deep sleep is just empty.
I see.
That's only, I will say, I don't know that though. I mean, there's no knowing of any of that. That's my best guess. Because what can you say? You can say endless stuff about awake life, because it's full. It's absolutely full. It's overflowing with endless sensations, sights, sounds, tastes, feelings. It is completely full, overwhelmingly so, you know. But deep sleep, you can't say anything about. And there isn't actually a difference between the two, other than one is seemingly full and one is we can say nothing about, because we can only speak of the fullness. We can't speak of emptiness. It's empty. And a lot of the futility of speaking about this is that we're trying to convey, what's trying to be conveyed is emptiness, no thingness, totally unknownness. Well, there is nothing to say about it. So when they're speaking about this, it's always speaking of the fullness, and we can only point to the emptiness.
Thank you.
Another way of describing it, Mats, would be, so there's just what's happening, but what's happening isn't happening. So the happening is the fullness, and the not happening is the emptiness, and the not happening and the happening are not two. Again, they're just words. They don't mean anything. I haven't found that. It can sound like, oh, well, Tim in his daily life, that's what he's experiencing. That's not what's being said. But no, it's not like an awakening experience. To get back to your first question, it's really not like an awakening experience, which is mind-blowing. What I'm speaking of here is incredibly ordinary. And the incredibly ordinary is why I quite often say that it's not what you would want. It's because you want more awakening experiences. Self wants more, you know, spectacular, symphony orchestras with fireworks. Not just having a cup of tea, stroking the cat.
Jackie has a hand up.
But it might be obvious that symphony orchestras and the most incredible fireworks, choirs of angels as well, is no different, is no more than a cup of tea and stroking the cat. That's the message. Sorry, Darren, who is?
Jackie has a hand up.
Jackie. Hi, Jackie. Hi, Jackie.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
So, the sense I get, you know, you're saying, is that when you say, you know, there's just peace, or, you know, the tea tastes nice, that's just kind of like it's like a direct thing. There's no kind of, you know, there's no like awareness of and then talking about it. It's just a kind of direct, direct coming out of nothing, kind of reporting of that, and that's the same here. You know, like if someone said, you know, like, you know, what does your tea taste like? I'd say, you know, it's sweet or whatever. And but at the same time as that being, you know, that like that, I'm just trying to get a sense of, like, here, you know, like here there's that I can say what, you know, what's happening or what I feel, you know, what's happening, but there's always the accompanying thought of I'm experiencing that.
Yeah, exactly.
And is that, so that's so that's an illusion that means there's someone experiencing it.
Yeah.
So it's just, so what is that thought? It's just a thought. It's just another. It's just another what's happening. A thought arising.
Yeah, exactly.
So I can taste the tea.
Yeah, because the tasting of the tea happens, and the thought is always after the tasting of the tea that I'm tasting the tea. You know, in the story. So the thought, like just as you just said, the thought is just another happening.
And that too is coming out of nothing. It's not coming out of me. The illusion is that it's coming out of me, but that's just coming out of nothing.
And I don't.
Why?
Yeah, exactly. There is no
Why
answers
would
to
that
what.
thought of,
No, one of the great freedoms
Yeah.
of this is that it's the end of asking any questions about why. Don't ask. Well, it seems obvious because it was me who wanted to know why. And one of the great liberations, you could say, is that the one who needed to why stops asking the questions. And in that, there's most of the peace.
yeah,
Because who's disturbing the peace? Well, I am with my need to know.
yeah, yeah, you're right. Yeah, because it doesn't really matter. And I kind of get a sense it doesn't matter that that thought arises. It doesn't matter that that thought of like,
Oh.
you know, I'm tasting the tea. It really doesn't matter that that arises. It's just another perception. You know, it's just another happening.
Yeah.
There's no significance or meaning or problem or, you know, to say the tea tastes nice or I'm tasting the tea. They're equally just empty thoughts.
Yeah. All thoughts are really empty.
Yeah, but we add this massive significance to the idea or to the thought that's somewhere, you know, that it means something and that there's someone there thinking it.
And of course, the significance is all in they're my thoughts. So of course, if they're my thoughts, then they are significant because they're saying something about me.
But like I have a million thoughts that I don't really take any notice of. And except when I say, you know, but then when I say that's me, that seems to suddenly catch my attention or something.
Yeah, it does.
Like somehow that's a more significant thought than it's raining outside.
Yeah, that's right. Well, the rain, But then, of course, what you do with the raining outside is I can get really upset about that because I wanted to put the washing out. So even that I can make into, you know, something that's really significant. Even the rain's against me today. You know, the weather is against me.
Yeah.
Self loves a story that actually God, you know, or just nature's against me. The whole universe, it's me against the universe. That's really the sense of self. And what we're speaking of is that story can die. And even if the story doesn't die, its reality can die. That's really what dies. There is no me to die, but the significance that I gave to all those thoughts and those stories, that can die. And in that seeming death is the seeming death of what I called myself. Nothing, and then nothing has been lost. There isn't anything lost in it. Thoughts happen exactly the same as before, Jackie, because they were coming from nowhere.
But
and then go on.
But once that sense of me, you know, once that there's no sense of me there, there's no identity there, then would that thought even arise? Surely that thought wouldn't even arise. Oh, it's me tasting the tea, because there's no experience happening. So would that kind of self-reflection consciousness thing, surely those thoughts don't arise anymore?
Yeah, but I just think, you know, a lot of thinking is habitual, is conditioned, and of course those thoughts can still arise, but they're not. No one's listening, you could say. You know, they're not engaged with, you know, the one. So the thought arises, and of course I start to think other thoughts in relation to those thoughts. Basically, I get into a conversation about that thought. And I'm not saying that can't happen either, but none of that will be of any, it just doesn't matter. Because all of the weight of that thinking, all of the heaviness, the seriousness is. And the wonderful news is there's nothing to sort out.
Oh,
There's nothing to sort out.
Yeah.
And no one to sort it out.
It's funny though how like it doesn't. Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, Jack.
Thank you.
Scott has his hand up.
Hi, Scott.
Hey, Tim. Hey, everyone. Man, I keep thinking of this phrase of yours, a ruthless love. It's scary as hell. And it's a better thing that we don't have any control over it, because it's going to manhandle us and chew us up. I've just spent 3 days in bed, not moving 1 inch because
Really?
I couldn't stand anything. I couldn't stand a thought. It was just too invasive, any input at all. And I wasn't scared. I just somehow I found some still place in me and said, okay, I'm just going to camp out here for 3 days. And it was like I was allergic to thinking. So it's not like I decided it. I didn't decide to stop thinking. I couldn't stand it. And I think that's what finally happens is it just takes over, and any separation at all is just painful. It's painful as hell.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Ah, thanks, Scott. It will pass, you know.
Well, I made myself come downstairs and listen to people talking, because it was just too much for me. And the real cherry on top, though, is you realize there was never separation. And I had like a waking dream of water going through a sieve. Well, it's all water, and then it looks like it's separating in the sieve, and then it's back to all water again. And then our minds are just separating it into pieces and saying, now I get it. But it doesn't change the water at all.
No.
And in a funny way, it's like we're tasting the water, but we're not tasting it at all, because we're chopping it up and fucking it over and screwing it up. And so if we could sit and like just the idea of no separation at all, just
No.
It's not like it wasn't there. It was never there.
No.
We invented the whole thing.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. That's great, because the hardest thing to convey is that it isn't that there are some human beings who are no longer separate. That's not what's being said. That's not what wants to be communicated. That's not it. It's just that there is no separation.
And it's so, it's terrifying. Hearing Matt's, he's like, oh yeah, there's going to be a fun time. I'm sure we wouldn't have gone on the path if we didn't think there was going to be a rainbow somewhere. But my God, it really does chew us to pieces. And I think only the most ruthless parts of us are going to survive it. The parts that are so still that everything else is just not interesting.
Well, the most amazing thing, Scott, that makes no sense at all, is that in the seeming losing of everything, I mean all of it, you won't get to keep any parts at all, because there really were never any parts. So you will not keep any of those parts that you're thinking you might keep. Those, as you've just described, those are the most pure parts or the most resilient parts. No, it will all go, and then in that, nothing will be lost at all. Absolutely nothing.
Well, there is a part in all of us that's not moving at all. I think the still part. That seems to be the only refuge, the only survivor. Let's say, because everything else that was invented, that moved, that changed, that improved, that evolved, all that was.
Yeah. Yeah, and the thing about the bit that you're talking about that could survive, I mean, that's completely empty.
Yeah.
That's why it's not moving. The unmoving, the complete stillness is just another word or another attempt to describe what doesn't change. The changeless, yeah. And that's not separate from everything changing, you know. So everything will still seem to change. All things will seem to change, but that and the changeless are not two. That's the whole message.
But are you even interested in change?
No, not at all.
I mean, I can't be bothered. I love that phrase from last week. I just can't be bothered. It's
Oh, you won't. You know,
it's exhausting. It's exhausting.
no, there will be absolutely no interest in change. No.
Yeah.
How could there be?
It's just weird.
There is no. there is nothing to change, and yet, of course, you can still be entertained with games of changing. There can still be that. You know, I'm still developing a new improved golf swing.
Yeah.
And you can play that game, but it doesn't, you know, it doesn't mean anything. There's nothing in it. But
You know, I went through a phase, and I wonder if we all do, of kind of conspiracy theory, or it's not all cranked up to be what they're telling us it is. Kind of, there must be someone behind the scenes. But
Yeah.
the real conspiracy theory is that nothing's real. And so I think it's a stepping stone to, like, you know, wow, that's Maya. That's I've been hoodwinked my whole life, kind of thing.
yeah.
I mean, there's nobody pulling the strings. You're if anyone, it was you, you know, trying to hold on to some identity, separate identity.
Yeah.
And your mind was ready to do anything it had to do, whatever it had to invent, as crazy as it was, to keep that alive.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think we all fall down from exhaustion at the end. I just think it plays itself out until there's got nothing left to give. And
Yeah.
I don't think we can plan it or anything. It's just, it was just.
No. Well, one of the most obvious things will be that, you know, your will is irrelevant. You know, it's of no.
It's part of the problem.
Your will is of no significance at all. Whether it seems to be going with your will or against your will, both seem to be completely irrelevant. Life is just as it is. That's it. That's all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, will or no will. And you don't, yeah, and because I get asked questions about free will quite a bit, but any interest in free will, I mean, I just don't, it's completely redundant, the whole idea.
Still, though, Tim, I'd say I have to pray for every single person on this Zoom call, because it's a tough road.
It is, yeah.
Tough road. So a lot of courage to everyone. Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Scott. Yeah. Oh yeah, it can feel. Yeah. Good luck, Scott.
Tim, I was just thinking, can you hear me?
Yes.
I was just thinking about what Scott was saying about the stillness and that emptiness, and you were talking about deep sleep earlier. And sometimes it feels like the emptiness of deep sleep is the emptiness of perception. That, I mean, it's not that the emptiness is not the same, but it's the same thing, which isn't the thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that. Well, I'd just say there's no difference from waking or sleeping. That seeming separation, that life is separated into sleeping and awake, that's seen as illusory as well. It's because absolutely life is completely empty, and you can't know the emptiness in deep sleep. It's just empty. But you can seemingly, it seems like the emptiness can be, I don't know, I haven't got a word for it because it's not perceived, it's not felt, it's not, none of the words that we have, none of the language we have at our disposal comes close to, because I mean, I speak all the time about emptiness, and yet how the emptiness is known, because the emptiness can't be known. So it's completely nonsensical. And yet I can't help but there's this compulsion, there's a compelling force or energy that wants to speak of it. And that is exactly the same in sleep or awake.
Yeah.
Then the difference is this awake, this seeming awake life is full of, is absolutely overflowing with stuff going on.
Yeah.
But that stuff going on and the complete emptiness are exactly the same.
Yeah. How can something that doesn't exist feel so palpable?
Yeah. And I haven't,
It's,
I've made attempts to try and say, because there is absolutely no knowing what we're speaking of, not at all. And yeah, it is most obvious. What on earth are we speaking of? I don't know. And you're just left with I don't know. And the wonder is that I don't know is absolutely okay. The completely not knowing is because that is actually the nature of how it is to be human. And the illusion of self is the illusion of knowing, this sense that I know a lot of stuff already, and if I know enough, then I will completely know. Well, that's just seen for what it is, which is a pathetic, it's kind of sweet, you could say. That sounds a bit like Tony if I say sweet, because if anyone says what they know, if you've ever listened to Tony Parsons, if anyone says what they know in one of his meetings and he goes, oh, sweet. And I kind of get it, but it's so condescending. I mean, talk about a put down for me, that is, you know, because the me who's saying it doesn't want to be sweet at all, wants to be, you know, very knowledgeable, extreme, you know, got a great depth of understanding. And but there is an innocence in it. So all that effort to know, all that, how hard you tried to understand, and it was absolutely all for nothing. And of course, that's devastating for self. It's really devastating.
lovely.
Thanks, Darren. Just take my hair out of my eyes. I still do that. That's a real habit because I've got, you know, I flick it, just flick it across. I still do that. Funny. I wonder how long that will last. Has anyone else got a question? We've just got a couple of minutes. Anyone else got anything they'd like to share? Thanks for sharing that, Scott. That's powerful stuff. Thank you. I appreciate that, though.
Oh, Jackie says it's my birthday in chat. Happy birthday, Jackie.
Today?
Apparently.
Today?
Yeah. Today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
37?
Thank you. I'm 6.
I've still got it. I've still got it.
Today.
Pardon, happy birthday anyway. Have a lovely day.
Yeah, I've had a great time. Thank you very much. Getting pampered like crazy.
Oh, lovely. Are you having a tipple?
Probably.
Yeah, good. Hold on a sec. Okay, well, thanks very much. Thanks very much, everyone, for coming. Shall I do a meeting on Wednesday or not? If yeah, okay, I will. Me and Scott, and whoever else wants to come. Yeah, so I'll do an invitation tomorrow, and I'll put that on Facebook, and I'll send it to you. If you would like to be on the mailing list and you're not, then please message me, email me through the website, and I'll put you on the mailing list. Next week, I have show number 2 for Nothing FM. That's next Wednesday. In addition to the usual meetings. But yeah, lovely to see you all again. If you'd like to make a donation, then feel free to do so. All donations are gratefully received. What was I going to say? Oh, I've got a recording equipment via the wonder that is Amazon. So I've now got a proper microphone. I'm still in the process of getting a decent camera, because I look at Darren and his professional, I mean, look at him, he's glowing. And then I look at my picture and think, that is really, I mean, it's so second rate. So I'm in the process of doing an audio version of the book, This Deafening Silence, with me reading it. I don't know if it's a good idea or not, but Julie, who helped me with the books, thought it was a good idea. So I'm going to have a go at that this week. So see how that goes. I don't know how the book is with me reading it, because I'm just thinking I'll just be ad-libbing. It'd be hard for me to read it and not add to it. I'm not sure I can do it, if I'm honest. I'll be reading it and then going, what a load of bollocks, or something, you know, after. It'll just be how it is.
You'll add a lot to it, Tim, if you're kind of laughing and chuckling through it.
Well, I think so, yeah. But
Nice.
we'll see how it goes. Well, lovely to see you all. Take care, and hopefully see some of you on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Tim.
Thanks a lot. Good to
Bye.
see you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Tim.
Bye.
Thanks, Tim.
Thanks.
Thanks, Tim.
Thanks.
Bye all.